Harinam Kirtane Ekakiya Mara Nahipaya Bala Harinam Sankirtane Harinam Sankirtane Shri Kripa Kore Shadavindo Diya Tume Kripa Kore Shadavindo Diya Tume Kripa Kore Shadavindo Diya Deho Krishna Namadane Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, welcome everyone.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, good morning.
Hare Krishna. Good morning.
Everyone.
Good.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So yes, it's very nice to be here again in the morning, everyone together studying Bhagavad Gita. We have some wonderful things to discuss today. And last week we covered chapter 13, and today we will continue on with chapter 14. Yaman Sharmaji, thank you for joining us. I just saw that you're also here with us.
Well, of course, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. And you're kind of starting in the middle, so don't feel shy to ask questions if you need something, to catch up. But every chapter is a unit in and of itself, so I will be no problem. So yes, and really glad to have you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. So I will share the screen. We start always with the prayers to the spiritual master. What we did was a small bhajan. Right now we saw the Vaishnav Thakur bhajan, and these are the prayers. We sing them every time. And here we go. Okay, so this is the page 1 in the Bhagavad Gita if you have the book, but I'm pulling it up online. Om Jnanam Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadammayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitangsha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanustate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So I just want to start, before I share the slides, I want to start by reading the first few verses of chapter 14. So what do we, what was the core of chapter 13? Just in a few sentences, what was Krishna speaking about in chapter 13? This is a quick recap or just a reminder, revision. As far as this content, the subject matter, there's also kind of the application, the realizations, that we discussed. But just in terms of what Krishna is discussing, what is the gist of it?
So we talked about the Kshetra, Kshetragya, Jnana, and how we can differentiate between the Kshetra and Kshetragya,
Yes.
and the Jnana and
Gyeya.
Gyeya, right?
And
Yeah.
then Gyeya.
So I had a question for the for the first question of the homework.
Yes.
It says it has two parts: define Kshetra and Kshetragya. So that I understood. But then the second part is, it says that how can one detect the difference between the two? So that I didn't, I was not able to clearly define. So if you can just explain that.
Okay, very good. So so you talked about how there's Purusha and Prakriti. Kshetra, you mentioned Kshetra and Kshetragya. Kshetra, so chapter 13 is talking about what is Kshetra, means the field of activities. And Kshetra refers to what?
The knower of
The
that
body.
field of activity.
Kshetra refers
Is the
to
body?
Kshetra is the body, and Kshetragya, Vimala Bhakti Mataji, what's that?
It's the knower of the body,
Knower of the body.
knower of the activity, field of the activity.
Very nice. Okay. So Kshetra is the field. Kshetragya is the knower of the field. Jnana means what?
Jnana means knowledge.
Knowledge. And so there's 6 topics in chapter 13. This is the third one. And Gyeya means what? Now Gyeya.
Gye is the knower of the knowledge.
No, slightly different. So
Object.
yes, knower and that is different. So Gyeya is the object of that knowledge.
Okay.
The Kshetra is the knower of the field. The Gyeya is the object of the knowledge. So Jnana is knowledge, and Gyeya is what is the object or the goal of that knowledge. What is it that we are knowing about? And that refers to what or who? Anyone want to give it a shot? What does Gyeya refer to?
The object is Krishna.
Krishna.
Yes, Krishna is the object of our knowledge. So jnana is the process of knowing. Krishna Gya is the object of knowledge. Very nice. So that's the key difference. The jnana is knowledge, Gya is Krishna. So that's why once we know Gya through the process of bhakti, through the process of devotional service, once we know Krishna, the devotee is not so concerned with jnana. It said that the residents of Vrindavan who are playing with Krishna, they used the knowledge, the acts of knowledge, to cut the bonds of their attachments to this material world. So knowledge is used as an instrument to cut our entanglements, our attachments to this world, our false material attachments to this world. But once those are cut, once the axis purpose is fulfilled, then do we take the axe and put it in our backpack and we go to school with it, and then we take the axe and we go to the gym with it? No, it's like a hammer, right? We use the hammer to put the nail in or break something, separate something. But once the purpose, the function of the hammer is fulfilled, we put it away. In the same way, once the function of knowledge is fulfilled, then the devotee throws away that axe. He doesn't need that axe anymore because they know Gyeya. And this is why people like Prabhupada, these self-realized souls, they knew just about everything because they knew Krishna, they knew everything. And that's the subtle difference between Jnana and Gyeya. Knowledge about Krishna is also Krishna, right? That's knowledge of Krishna. It means Krishna. And this is why you're right, it is a subtle question, a difficult question. But there's still a difference because once you know Krishna, in fact, Vijnana, realized knowledge, once you know Krishna truly, you know the object of that knowledge, then although that knowledge is worshipable, non-different than Krishna, but still the devotee is no longer concerned so much with that knowledge. Yes. And the first two are Purusha and Prakriti. The first thing that chapter 13 talks about is nature, Prakriti, and Purusha, the enjoyer. And Purusha can refer to the living beings, and it can also refer to Krishna. Because the living beings are also trying to enjoy material nature. They're not the true enjoyer, but they're in a false enjoyment conception. And they have the capacity to enjoy, right? Like we enjoy the chair doesn't enjoy us. Because the chair is Prakriti, we are the Purusha. We are part and parcel of Krishna. So we have the capacity to enjoy. We can enjoy minutely, but our constitutional position is to enjoy in relationship with Krishna, not separately. When we try to enjoy separately as separate, masters, Purushas, then it's a problem. Then we feel frustrated. But we can enjoy. We are by nature of the nature of Krishna, not of the nature of Prakriti. So therefore, the soul is also Purusha with a small p, and Krishna's Purusha with a big P. There, Purusha refers to both, and Prakriti refers to nature. Kshetra refers to the body, Kshetragya refers to the knower of the body, and that also can be two, the soul and the super soul. The difference is the soul knows only its own body, the super soul knows all the bodies, everybody. Krishna is cognizant of what's going on in my body, and what's going on in your body, and what's going on in the dog's body. So that's the big difference, because I don't know what's going on in someone else's body, but Krishna knows. And finally, Jnana and Gyeya. Jnana is knowledge. Krishna tells us, remember, that he gives us a full, complete list of knowledge. This is knowledge. Everything besides this is ignorance. A to Z, he gives us complete knowledge. And then Gyeya only refers to Krishna, because only Krishna is the object of all knowledge. Now, Krishna includes all of us, meaning that we are part and parcel of him. Krishna includes this world, so we understand Krishna in relationship to this world. So, but the object of knowledge is Krishna. Goodness. So perfect. Your question actually helped us summarize what chapter 13 is. Yashoda Vatsala Prabhu, you have some comment to give?
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Just like there are two Kshetrajñas, the soul and other is super soul. Are there two objects of knowledge, or there cannot be two object of knowledge? Like, because I was just thinking Prabhupada's book of Science of Self-Realization. So if I also don't understand who I am, who is Krishna and my relationship with Krishna.
Yes. So there's many objects of knowledge, right? I mean, even if I'm going to the university and studying physics, that's an object of knowledge. I mean, the world, you could say, is the object of knowledge. But the only object of knowledge that is we want to pursue, so to say, that there's so many objects we can spend time, studying, molecules our whole life. But the worthy object of knowledge is Krishna. Because once we know Krishna, then we know ourselves also. Now, in order to know Krishna, we also have to understand ourselves. So that's all part of it. And that's where the oneness and difference comes, that Krishna is one with this world, but he's still different than the world. Or rather, it's the other way around. The world is one with Krishna, yet it's still different. Krishna is still beyond this world. So, yes, we get knowledge of the soul, but that knowledge is a stepping stone to knowledge of Krishna. Knowledge of the soul is useless unless we connect it with Krishna. There's so many, spiritualist movements, and they just study the self and about, spirituality, and it's nice. It's at least Brahman realization. But until we come to the understanding of Krishna, there's no ananda there. There's no bliss there. That's not the ultimate object of knowledge. It can be an object of knowledge, but Geya has a sense of what is the ultimate object of knowledge, and that is Krishna. That's my understanding.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Madhuri Krishna Prabhu.
See, Prabhu, you mentioned that we have the capacity to enjoy. Like trying to be independent from Krishna.
Yes.
Now, does that capacity to enjoy come from the free will that Krishna has allotted us, or is it something different?
So it's not just that Krishna's allotted us that free will. The nature of spirit itself is that it is free. Right? It has freedom. Soul means some freedom. That's the fundamental difference between matter and spirit. So Krishna has two energies. One is his material energy, and the other is his spiritual energy. So we belong to the spiritual energy. And the very nature of spiritual energy, the very nature of the self is will. Self means will. If there's no will, then it's a stone. Like Prabhupada says, only a stone does not have desires. So the question, he says, is not giving up desire, it's having the right desires, desiring for Krishna. So desire is the very characteristic of the soul. Freedom and free will is the very characteristic, it's the very essence of a spiritual being. But like our children have freedom, that doesn't mean that they can take a knife and play with it. That freedom is not complete freedom. Our freedom is in relation with Krishna. Our freedom is, it's still, it's within the guidance of Krishna. Like the citizens have freedom, but they can't do anything. They can't drive on the left side of the road. So they have freedom. They can break the laws, but if they break the laws, then their freedom will be limited. They'll go into prison. So as much as we advance in spiritual life, the more we become a devotee, the more our freedom grows. Just like a prisoner, one who's not a devotee of the government, so to say, has less freedom. Even in the prison, they have freedom, but they have less freedom. And when they are self-realized, then they have more freedom. Right? When they are good citizens, then they have more freedom. So when we are actually realizing that we're the soul and not in the bodily conception of life, then we have more freedom. Yes. So right now the soul can choose. Can I go towards Krishna or away from Krishna? Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we will now start with chapter 14. This was what we talked about in chapter 13. And how does this now connect to chapter 14? Well, one of the things that, we talked about nature, enjoyer, and consciousness, right? And all activities and nature, Krishna talks about in chapter 13, are within the modes of nature, right? We discussed that. There's a whole section on it, you might remember, where we talked about nature and activities in nature within the three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. So now Krishna, in this chapter, talks about the modes of material nature. And that is why this chapter is called the three modes of material nature. This is actually one of my favorite chapters because it's actually very accessible and very relevant. We think, oh, this is just three modes. Well, how's it? It's actually so relevant, this chapter, because when we understand this knowledge, we can actually see that all of our activities are in different modes of nature. And we can actually, like, you get a new, like a lens almost to see the world, because then actually you can understand, okay, I was in the mode of passion. I needed to be in the mode of goodness. I was in the mode of ignorance. I need to maybe be more passionate, or at least in the mode of, or best in the mode of goodness. Similarly, when someone does something to us, we can understand why they're acting in that way based upon the modes. We don't take it personally. So they acted like this. Okay, they have a lot of passion and ignorance in that. They've taken shelter of those modes rather than the mode of goodness. So by understanding the modes of nature, we can understand why and how people act. Like, this is one of Arjuna's questions to Krishna that he asked in the beginning of the Gita, like, why do people act in the ways that they do? He's very frustrated, very dissatisfied in his heart, Arjuna. He cannot understand why are his brothers, the Kauravas, why are they behaving like this? They're so inimical to me. Why do they need to be so bad? He's always been nice to them. He's willing to give them the kingdom. And yet they will not leave him alone. They want to kill him even in the forest. So the modes of nature explain this. Why does a snake have to bite? Even you feed it milk, why does it have to bite? We never feel offended when it bites because we know it's a nature. The snake's nature is to bite. But with human beings, we assume somehow that it's not their nature. No, that also, they've developed a certain nature. And understanding this can help us overcome this bewilderment. At the same time, as human beings, we have the opportunity to overcome our nature. And so we can do that for ourselves, but at least we can understand for others the nature by which they are working. It's a very wonderful, powerful chapter. Like I mentioned, I'm just going to read the first few verses, and then we are going to then switch to the slides. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Param Bhuya Parabhakshami Jnananam Jnanamuttamam Yajñatva Munaya Sarve Param Siddhim Mito Gata. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, again, I shall declare to you this supreme wisdom, the best of all knowledge, knowing which all the sages have attained the supreme perfection. So this is generally where chapter begins, when Krishna says, okay, now I'm going to give you the supreme wisdom. And every chapter, almost every chapter, he says that this is the supreme wisdom. So we can understand that every chapter in the Gita is the supreme wisdom. Idam jnanam upashritya mama sadharmyam agata sargepi nopajayante pralayena vyathanti cha. One, by becoming fixed in this knowledge, one can attain to the transcendental nature like my own, thus established. One is not born at the time of creation or disturbed at the time of dissolution. So Krishna is giving the Phala Shruti, that by understanding this knowledge, one can attain my nature. So amazing. Just by understanding this knowledge, we can become like Krishna, meaning realize our spiritual nature. Thus established, one is not born at the time of creation or destroyed. So meaning we don't get a material birth again. in this material world. Prabhupada has such a beautiful purport here, where he talks about the spiritual sky. But actually, in the spiritual sky, one attains a spiritual form. There are spiritual activities, and the spiritual situation is called devotional life. That atmosphere is said to be uncontaminated, and there one is equal in quality with the Lord. To obtain such knowledge, one must develop all the spiritual qualities. One who thus develops the spiritual qualities is not affected either by the creation or by the destruction of the material world. The total material substance called Brahman is a source of birth, and it is that Brahman that I impregnate, making possible the births of all living beings, O son of Bharata. It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving father. Okay, so now Krishna's told that I'm the seed-giving father. There are spiritual beings, and they're taking birth in this material world, in the material nature. And now, text 5, he starts talking about material nature. What is this material nature? Material nature consists of 3 modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. When the eternal living entity comes in contact with nature, O mighty Arjuna, he becomes conditioned by these modes. So the pure soul, which is impregnated by Krishna, meaning it's spiritual, because Krishna's impregnating material nature with the seed, with the soul. As soon as it touches that material nature, the body starts to develop. Just like when the embryo is impregnated, the body starts to develop. So material nature starts to develop the body, and according to our vasanas that we're bringing from our last life, our desires, our attachments, we get a particular body comprising of the 3 modes of material nature. So this is a very short purport. I'll just read this. The living entity, because he is transcendental, has nothing to do with the material nature. We get so involved with this world. The Prabhupada here is saying we have nothing to do with this material world. Still, because he has become conditioned by the material world, he is acting under the spell of the 3 modes of material nature. Because living entities have different kinds of bodies, in terms of the different species of nature, they're induced to act according to that nature. This is the cause of the varieties of happiness and distress. So we're induced to act according to our nature. So now, chapter 14. Chapter 13 explained why the living entity, Purusha, is entangled in the external energy, Prakriti, due to his desire for enjoyment. There we go, the free will. Chapter 14 explains how material energy binds the soul through the modes of nature. Krishna glorifies the knowledge he is about to speak by explaining that it will liberate the spirit soul. He then explains how the desirous living entity first comes into contact with material nature, which we just read. He comes in contact by the will of Krishna. So now the remaining chapter sections, chapters 5, text 5 to 9 talk about the binding of the pure soul by the 3 modes of material nature. So like we said, how does it get bound in the 3 modes? 10 to 13, recognizing the supremacy of the mode within a person. So there's 3 modes, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, and one of them reigns supreme at any given moment. But in any situation, there's a combination. There's always some ignorance, some passion, some goodness, but one of them is primary. This is why, although all three are there, but sometimes we're driven by passion, because that is reigning supreme, that mode. Text 14 to 18, actions and death within the modes. So what are different activities in different modes? And one can die in either of these three modes, and accordingly, one gets a future body. And finally, the purpose of understanding these modes, how does understanding, why would this chapter liberate us? Because then the major bulk of this chapter, Krishna talks about transcending the modes of nature. Because as I mentioned, all three modes are present all the time. But one is reigning supremacy. One is, most influential. So even if we're established in the mode of goodness, let's say that's the most influential mode in our life, there'll still be some passion and ignorance. So if we want to become truly free from passion and ignorance, we cannot unless we transcend the modes of nature. Just becoming, established in goodness does not allow us to remain in the mode of goodness. Eventually, we will also become conditioned by passion and ignorance. So the only solution is to transcend the modes, that I'm not these modes. I'm not the modes of nature. I'm beyond these modes. Srila Prabhupada summarizes the conditioning of the three modes. The living entities conditioned by material nature are of various types. One is happy, goodness. Another is very active, passion. And another is helpless, ignorance. So being too dependent, Prabhupada says, on someone else or other people is a unfortunate or miserable situation. And this is why, we like to be independent, right? Why do people like to? Because helplessness is a mode of ignorance, dependency. Being very active, working, making a life, that's passion. And being very happy, satisfied. So not the opposite of helplessness is not just helping oneself. That's passion. But the opposite of helplessness is happiness. That I'm satisfied. I am dependent on Krishna. That is the mode of goodness. So this is, we see like devotees like Sanatan Goswami and Madhavendra Puri and others. They were not very actively passionate pursuing material things. They're mendicants, yet they were also not helpless, but rather they're happy in Krishna consciousness. They're satisfied. Text 4, what binds the soul to the material world? How does the soul come into the material world? Material nature is the mother, supplying the living entity with a physical body. Krishna is the father of all, for he impregnates nature with the seed-like souls. I mean, it makes perfect sense. Krishna consciousness is so simple, but we make it complicated. Krishna has given us this material world as a reflection, right? We say. So Krishna's given us the reflection world. And the reflection gives us an indication on the source. In this world, the mother and father are both needed to develop a child. In the same way, on the cosmic level, material nature is the mother, it's the Shakti of the Lord, Krishna is the father. And Krishna gives the seed, Mother Nature develops the body. So we read this verse. So these are the three modes: goodness, passion, ignorance. So, and the bottom comic is showing how people are truly conditioned by their modes. A normal human being can never think about eating stool because the mode of ignorance is not so prominent. Human life is actually more the mode of passion. But a hog is conditioned by the mode of ignorance, and therefore they love stool, right? So, the animal species, this is why we don't want to go into the animal species, are in generally conditioned by the mode of ignorance. In human life, we can go goodness, passion, ignorance. So we can do it as we like, but we have the full opportunity. It's primarily governed by passion. This is why, human beings are, they control the rest of the species because they're very passionate. But we can move up to goodness, or we can glide down more towards ignorance. Okay, so now let's look at the qualities of these different modes. The mode of goodness, sattva. Conditions 1 to happiness and knowledge. Conditions 1 to happiness and knowledge. The symptoms are correct perception and cleanliness inside and out. So when we are in the mode of goodness, we're conditioned by happiness. We're naturally, internally happy. And we also have knowledge. It's based upon knowledge. And when you have that knowledge, you have correct perception, you're clean inside and out, and every gate of the body is illuminated. This is a very interesting point. What does it mean that all the bodily gates are illuminated? This means that you know how to use every gate of the body properly, the proper use of it. So the eyes, rather than seeing something vulgar, you know that I must see the form of Krishna. The ears, so every part of the body is illuminated with knowledge, including the genitals, the proper use of them. Krishna says, I am that, when it's properly used in Krishna's service, not for degrading us, but rather than to elevate us by producing Krishna conscious children responsibly within marriage. So every gate of the body is illuminated by knowledge. And the result of the mode of goodness after we die is that we go to the higher planets. As a result of goodness, we move upward. Dying in goodness means moving upward. And the result of action in the mode of goodness is that it purifies us more and more. So the more we're in goodness, the more we become more in goodness. Because the more better we do, the more better we become. And then we want to do more good, and then more good, and then more. So like this, it said that the cowherd boys accumulated heaps of pious activities. And therefore, one day they're able to play with Krishna. And what are these pious activities? This is devotional service. So in some sense, that's above the mode of goodness, but transcending the mode of goodness means Shuddha Sattva, pure goodness. So it really is just goodness, but it's not mixed with passion and ignorance. So that pure goodness is devotional service. Okay. So then, mode of passion. We did goodness, now passion.
Guruji, can I ask one question?
Yes.
On the previous slide, what that 14 means when you say, higher planets 14?
This is referring to the verse number.
Oh, okay.
These are the verse numbers here. Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Good question. Good question. So, second one is mode of passion. So passion, we think actually in the mature consciousness and in the mature world, we glorify passion the most. Oh, this man was so ambitious. He was passionate. Have a passion like, I don't know, like Elon Musk. And those are heroes. So whole mature consciousness is governed and glorified by passion. But that's not the devotee's mindset, because they know it all ends at death. They know, you boost your ego, you're an ambitious person, you're a proud person. Then where does it end? In frustration. The sages of India, they were therefore not so interested in making discoveries and scientific discoveries. They knew that knowledge, But why didn't it develop so much in the East, this scientific knowledge? Because their interest was the mode of goodness. Let's go internal. Let's find the soul. Let's seek the spiritual substance. But material life and materialistic culture is all about passion. Let me, make a discovery so I can, control all of nature. Let me dig as deep as I can. Let me build as high as I can. The Rajas stage of life gives a slight clue to the realization of the absolute truth in the forms of fine sentiments in philosophy, art, and culture with moral and ethical principles. So actually, even the mode of passion is quite exalted. So many of us are not even on the mode of passion because, as I mentioned, all of these passionate things that we do, they, if they're not done out of madness, which is ignorance, then they're the mode of passion. So passion is actually developing also artistic skills, even philosophy. You think, oh, that's goodness, but that's passion. Very interesting, this is actually, if it's not, if it's about our advancement of knowledge, rather than what was goodness, illumination, correct perception. If it's not spiritual philosophy, if it's philosophy, like they study the philosophy of everything, philosophy of art, philosophy of music, philosophy of justice. All of these things are material subject matters. And a lot of study is in the mode of passion. Goodness is more meditative, not so much knowledge acquiring. So what does passion condition us to? It conditions us to hankering and attachment. A person in mode of passion is always hankering, and they're attached to what they have, and therefore they're fearing to lose what they have. Like when we have a good position in a company, then we're always afraid of losing that position. I may get fired, I may get demoted, or we're hankering for a better position. So lamenting and hankering, these are the two qualities. The symptoms of passion are greed, accumulation, always undertaking new projects, new things, no consistency, regularity, peacefulness, uncontrollable desire. The results are, after death, there's rebirth among fruitive workers. So one is reborn in this world, not a bad birth, but among, again, we're born in a busy family. We're working. Work is worship. And that's glorified in this world, but it's not, going to fully satisfy us. And the action in the mode of passion, unfortunately, leads to misery. Because when we act in passion, then we are acting in passion rather than in knowledge. And finally, the mode of ignorance. My gosh, look at this. Okay. The mode of ignorance, tamas. It conditions one to madness, indolence, and sleep. Sleep is in the mode of ignorance when we sleep too much. And we'll talk more about that. A moroseness, always crying, complaining, always, morose, rather than finding a solution, blaming it on others. We see people with this mindset. Inactivity, madness, illusion. These are the modes of ignorance. The results of this is after we die, we go into the animal kingdom, because these are the qualities of the animals. And action in the mode of ignorance leads to foolishness. There's no gain. It's just one foolishness leading into another foolishness. The modes of nature compete for supremacy within an individual. Although one may be in lower modes, he can choose to nourish the higher modes and thus assist their victory over the others. Thus one can elevate his modes. Very interesting point here, that when we see our mind going into passion and ignorance, like we start to get bad thoughts, bad desires, we have a secret addiction or weakness, then the way to avoid them is not to try to give them up, because that doesn't work, right? The more we try to give them up, the more we think about them and the more we become attached to them. But rather the way out is to assist the higher modes of nature, assist the better modes of nature. That's the key thing, because when we do that, then we're allowing that better mode to be triumphant, right? If we absorb ourselves more in goodness, then naturally that's where our mindset and our heart and everything will be. Sorry, I just have to plug in my computer. It's running low on batteries. 1 second. Like in a certain point in my life, I realized that I need to read some Shastra every day, and read and maybe write if we can also, because that engages my mind. So, even if I chant or if I do this or that, but unless I engage my mind, my thoughts in Krishna forcefully by this process, is like naturally it engages, right? Forcefully meaning that when you do this activity, automatically your mind is pulled into Krishna thoughts. Then if I don't do that, then material thoughts, material frustrations, material issues overpower my consciousness. So rather than trying to give up the material thoughts and suppress them, if we just nourish the higher modes, like all of you are doing, you're studying the Gita, you're spending your valuable time on Saturday to read and study Krishna's words, then automatically our consciousness becomes elevated. We become very satisfied. So these were the initial sections, and now we are on the section of transcending the modes of nature. My hope is that today we can complete this chapter, because really we should be doing a chapter a week, but some of these longer chapters are hard to finish in 1 week. So we've been taking 2 weeks for one chapter, but at least this one is a short one we can try to do in 1 week. And once again, I'll forget later on, just to remind all of you, please try to do the homework. And if you haven't, please fill out that form that Rashmi Mataji sent out, that essentially you self-enter in which homeworks you've completed, and the information that we need to share for completing the course. So chapter 14, that we'll try to do this week, the homework. So 419, very special verse. Nanyam gunebhya kartaram yada drashtanupashyati gunebhyascha param veti madbhavam sodigachyati. When one properly sees that in all activities no other performer is at work than these modes of nature, and he knows the Supreme Lord, who is transcendental to all these modes, he attains my spiritual nature. So many times Krishna talks about this in different sections of the Gita. He also says, Janma karma chame divyam. If you know my nature, then you don't take birth in this material world again. Here it's being said that if you understand that this whole world is just a functioning as a manipulation of these modes, And we're not affected by that because we know who Krishna is. Krishna is transcendental to these modes. So if I take shelter of Krishna, these modes cannot affect me, or the effects of these modes cannot affect me. Others in these modes cannot disturb me. Then we attain our the spiritual nature of Krishna. He attains my spiritual nature, meaning we attain that abode of Krishna because Krishna is above the modes. And if we are thinking of Krishna, then we also attain to that same place. So now the question is, what are these gunas? This is a little bit philosophical, kind of my own interest in this. You know, we say everything is a combination of these three modes. So are these gunas like the atoms of this world that they produce the aspects of this world? Are they attributes or colors? Everything is colored by the gunas? Or are they capacities? Sattva, rajas, and tamas. So when we say the mode of goodness, what do we mean? When we say goodness, passion, ignorance, the gunas produce this world, what exactly do we mean? The Srimad Bhagavatam tells us that it's really none of these, or all of these. The gunas are shaktis, they're powers. They are the energies of the Lord. And these three energies combine to produce this world and our natures and the different mindsets, because it's these three energies that produce this world, physically speaking. They color the different activities or places of this world by certain modes, and they're also capacities. They're also capacities in the sense like fire has the capacity to burn. It's an energy. The energy of heat has the capacity to burn. In the same way, these three energies are Jnana Shakti, which is goodness. Goodness is Jnana Shakti. Why? Because it emanates or produces, it brings about knowledge. Kriya Shakti is passion. The passion energy, even people in the mode of goodness need some Kriya Shakti because passion gets things done. In passion, this is the energy of activity. And finally, Dravya Shakti is the Shakti of ignorance. Dravya means like stuff. It's just the elements, the matter of this world. It's in the mode of ignorance because it's inert. And as we are influenced by these Shaktis, we exhibit those qualities. If we are in Jnana Shakti, we emit knowledge, happiness. If we're in Kriya Shakti, we emit hard work, busyness. And if we're in Dravya Shakti, we emit sleep and and inaction. And from these gunas, all the other elements become manifest. So this is a chart of all the different elements of this world. So we have Krishna. From Krishna comes Maya. From Maya comes Prakriti. Maya is the energy of the Lord. From Maya can come Avidya or Vidya. But main point here is that then, and from Krishna directly are the Jivas. So this world is Jiva plus all of this. So from Maya we get Prakriti. From Prakriti we have the Mahatattva, which is like the primordial soup. And that produces Ahankar, which is the false body, the false self of this world. And then from there, from the Ahankar, this false self, we have three things that kind of fulfill the picture. The false self acts in certain modes, and those are the Jnana Shakti, the Kriya Shakti, and Dravya Shakti. And from each one of these Shaktis, you have different elements that are becoming manifest. With Kriya Shakti, all the senses and all the senses become manifest. By Dravya Shakti, all the elements of this world become manifest: earth, water, fire, air, ether, space. And by Jnana Shakti, the demigods, the knowledge about Krishna and his relationship with this world becomes all manifest. So we can find a relation to this, a connection with this with Aristotelian metaphysics. Because Aristotle asked the question that fundamentally speaking, what is this world? Most fundamentally speaking, what is the world? So he asked one of his students this question, and the student said, that I don't know what this world is. So he asked him, well, is it? What are the fundamental building blocks of this world? Well, we say the fundamental building blocks of this world are atoms. So he says, well, what is an atom? Well, an atom is a proton, a neutron, an electron all put together. What is an electron? Well, an electron is a particle that is electrically charged and that flies at a very fast speed. So this is what an electron is. But these are all qualities. An electron is, something that flies at very, very fast speed. It is electrically charged. So Aristotle goes forward and he asks, but what is it? That these are qualities of the electron that you mentioned, but what is it? And to that, there's no response, because what is an electron you cannot know. You define other things in terms of what the electron is. But the Bhagavatam, you define other bigger things in terms of electrons. But at a certain point, you have to stop where things are self-evident, or you can only define them in relation to other things, not in of themselves. So Aristotle's final conclusion is that these electrons are the building blocks of this world, electrons, protons, neutrons, but that these fundamental elements of this world are not these things, because we can't know them, we can only describe them, but the fundamental things of this world are energies or shaktis. So he also saw the world as fundamentally a combination of powers or energies. He said energies are the most fundamental building blocks of this world, and that's what Krishna is saying here, that these gunas are the energies of this world. So now, how to get out of these modes, that's what we were talking about. So we go to text 20. Text 20, when the embodied being is able to understand these three modes associated with the material body, he can become free from birth, death, old age, and their distresses, and can enjoy nectar even in this life. So it's not easy, but if we're able to transcend these modes, we can actually become deathless, because then we don't identify with the body. We identify only with the soul, and we enjoy nectar in this life. Text 21, Arjuna inquired, "O my dear Lord, by which symptoms is one known who is transcendental to these three modes? What is his behavior, and how does he transcend the modes of nature?" So this is Arjuna's big question in this chapter. How do I transcend these modes? What is the behavior of someone who has transcended, and how does one transcend these three modes? Text 22 to 25. The Supreme Personality of God has said, "O son of Bandhu, he who does not hate illumination, attachment, and delusion when they're present, or long for them when they disappear, who is unwavering and undisturbed, through all these reactions of the material qualities, remaining neutral and transcendental, knowing that the modes alone are active, who is situated in the self and regards alike happiness and distress, who looks upon a lump of earth, a stone, and a piece of gold with an equal eye, who is equal toward the desirable and the undesirable, who is steady, situated equally well in praise and blame, honor and dishonor, who treats alike both friends and enemy, and who has renounced all material activities. Such a person is said to have transcended the modes of material nature." So this again is a theme in the Gita. So many times we found that a person can transcend the modes of nature, or has transcended, when when they're undisturbed in honor and dishonor, when they treat equally the friends and enemies, understanding that no one is our enemy and no one is our friend, only Krishna is our true friend. Everyone is part and parcel of Krishna, and that way everyone is our friend. However, not friend in terms of the material calculation. And a devotee who is self-realized is undisturbed by honor and dishonor, right? Friend and enemy. So these qualities, they very quickly allow us to advance in spiritual life. In of themselves, they're not spiritual life, but the qualities help us advance in spiritual life. We look at happiness and distress equally, undisturbed by it, in fact, using distress as an opportunity for advancing in Krishna consciousness. Next text, when one desires neither attainment of pleasure nor escape from pain, he has transcended the modes of nature. So we are always continuously striving to avoid pain. But here, Krishna and Prabhupada are saying that if you transcend the modes of nature, we can escape pain. Or rather, if we engage in the process bhakti, not hankering for material things, not trying to avoid, not trying to, always enjoy ourselves in the material way, then and only then can we transcend the modes of material nature. When we stop seeking material pleasure and being afraid of material pain. The embodied soul will always undergo dualities of loss and gain, but the liberated soul can remain unaffected by these things due to focusing his identity within. So beautiful. So how do you do that? Very famous verse. Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatitetan brahmavuyaya kavate. One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances. Unfailing in all circumstances, very key. At once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. So this is a realization we all have, that within our society, our country, our family, and our movement, there's so many problems. But how do we transcend the modes of material nature when we are still, in spite of these problems, we are fully engaged in devotional service and we're unfailing in all circumstances? We're engaged in devotional service and there's no question for us not to do it. Though things go wrong or things are bad, we are unfailing in our devotional service. And that's a quality of a great soul. And I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal, and is a constitutional position of ultimate happiness. Krishna is the basis. Brahmano hi pratishtaham. Very good verse to know and memorize. Krishna is the basis of Brahman. He is saying, not that Brahman is his basis. Some people say, oh, Brahman comes down as God. Brahman takes the form of a human being for some time. No, Krishna is the basis of Brahman, not the other way around. And thank you very much. This is the final verse. Krishna saying, understand me to be eternal, imperishable, and go back home, back to Godhead. Realize your eternal constitutional position. All right. Perfect timing. We have about 10 minutes. We can have some good discussion now. And I can take some questions which are already coming. Let me just check the chat box here also. Okay, so so tell we can now everyone can see me clearly. Okay.
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, so Shri Nitai Charan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you for the excellent class, delineating all the different qualities of material nature from the previous chapter and also the current one. It's a good connection. So when you put the slide on 22 to 25, so Krishna says you shouldn't, react either this way or that way. I mean, I was reading, when you also put a picture on the side, a stone, right? So this symptom of soul is consciousness, right? And also we acquire material nature, I mean, different natures because we are in contact. But if we don't react, then what is the difference between an inanimate object and the soul? Soul is, I mean, there's a beautiful book by Srila Prabhupada among the many books, Once on the Way to Krishna. There he defines what different levels of consciousness, how it's related to the happiness. One can from tree to animal to human being. So how do we view that 22 to 25? Can I be just a mute spectator? Or do I react or don't I react? This is my first question. Okay. And second question, if you may permit me.
Yes, please go ahead.
There's a famous word, utsag nichya, like we need enthusiasm and determination to move forward in spiritual journey, right? Isn't it an aspect of passion? Utsag, isn't it part of passion?
Good question. Wow.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. So the first question was that this verse is saying that we are, we are undisturbed in happiness and distress, honor and dishonor. We see everything to be equal. But in the book On the Way to Krishna, you were saying how Prabhupada is describing that how we have to discriminate. Different types of activities lead to different results. Is this your first question, Nityacharan Prabhu? Did I see?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. So how can we practice this? I mean, are we just supposed to be, kind of neutral all the time and not excited? Shouldn't we hanker for spiritual advancement? So absolutely very important distinction that is made in this, that spiritual activities in relation to Krishna do not have the same characteristic or do not possess the same nature as material activities. So when Krishna here is speaking about free from, remaining neutral, he actually says this, remaining neutral, not being affected by happiness and distress, not being affected by gain or loss. So a devotee, doesn't really like throw a party when they, something good happens to them, because they understand the nature of material things. That I got this today. If I'm really excited about this, well, tomorrow I may lose it. Just like we get excited about things, right? A similar metaphor. This really puts it into focus. But at night when we dream that we have gained a castle, right? You have this dream, you are the prince riding on a white horse and you in this beautiful castle. Then when we wake up in the morning, we don't throw a big party and rejoice. I become king, I'm the prince. Friends, please come and entertain me. We don't. Why? Because we know that dream world is not the real world. But in our real life, so to say, now calling this material world the real life, when something good happens, we do celebrate. In the same way, the devotee celebrates like anything. We have big festival, Janmashtami. We celebrate, our initiation anniversary. Sometimes we celebrate devotee birthdays. We celebrate, literally, Krishna consciousness is a festival. How, in what way are we neutral? But we are celebrating the spiritual things, the things that actually are eternal, that have some lasting benefit. Whereas the material things, devotee, he accepts whatever Krishna gives, but doesn't take material things so seriously. He's undisturbed by them. Material honor and dishonor, material friendship and enmity, these things are the result of the gunas. So why should one become affected by them? So that's the answer to your first question, Prabhu. What's your second question again? Can you remind me?
It's about passion. and also I referenced the Utsaga Nischayat, like in a sense, we need enthusiasm to
Yes.
move forward in spiritual journey, right?
Yes, and so this is a perfect, second question, where enthusiasm is there for spiritual things. For spiritual life, we are very enthusiastic. Krishna is always in anxiety. Mother Yashoda is always in anxiety for Krishna. That's mode of passion, but that's for Krishna, right? That anxiety is spiritual anxiety for Krishna. So that is not passion, that is spiritual life, that is spiritual benefit. So the devotee is not hankering or lamenting for material things, is not an anxiety for material things. That's up to Krishna, whatever happens. That's whatever is written, whatever Krishna wants is going to happen. I have to just make my effort, but not be attached, not hanker for it. But in spiritual life, the very qualification, Rupa Goswami says, for spiritual life, the very devotees who are experts on this, they are saying that the qualification is intense greed. He says the only qualification to attain Krishna is the greed to attain him, the desire to attain him. So you're absolutely right. In spiritual life, we must do that. So I think that metaphor of the dream is very key, that hankering for things in a dream is foolishness. It's ignorance. It's passion. But hankering for real things is not. In the same way, hankering for material things, which are temporary, is mode of passion. Hankering for Krishna is the mode of goodness. Shuddha Sattva. Thank you. Nice questions.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Srinivas Pundarika Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandava Pranams. Thank you for the wonderful class.
Thank you.
In the sloka 26, Krishna mentions that engage in devotional service, unfailingly, then you can raise to the level of Brahman. So what do you mean by, I always have that question whenever I read that, but what do you mean by raising to the level of Brahman? Does it mean we realize that we are the spiritual soul, or
that means that it's writing in Sanskrit, what we would say in English, then you come to the transcendental platform. Because all of Brahman is transcendental, right? Brahman means transcendental. Any form of Brahman is transcendental. So we are Brahman, Krishna's Brahman. So our problem right now is that though we are Brahman, Krishna's Brahman, we are soul, Krishna's soul, we are right now engrossed in the material world, right? Everything's all about the material thing, the body, the job, the house, the cars. It's all material, and we need a way to spiritualize it. So by engaging in devotional service, we elevate it to the level of Brahman. Brahman, in his most general translation, means spiritual life, spirituality. Also, it can mean elevated to Krishna consciousness, to Krishna, because Krishna is what? Para-Brahman. So by engaging in devotional service, we attain Krishna, who is Brahman. He is Brahman. Of course, we say he is Para-Brahman. He's the highest Brahman, but the highest Brahman is also Brahman. So that Brahman can mean transcendence. It can also mean Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. Shyam-Sundar Prabhu? Shri Shyam-Sundar. You're breaking up a little bit. We cannot hear you clearly.
Maybe my connection. Can you hear me?
No, Prabhu. Maybe you can put your question in the chat and then I can read it.
Thank you.
Yes, Prabhu. Vijay Nrsimha Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you for the class. I had a question come realization to see if that's correct thinking. Previously the devotee had asked about passion and how that can relate to being in the mode of goodness. You had mentioned that all gunas are shaktis. And so is it correct to think that all the three gunas, all the three energies are actually needed to be able to function in this material world? It is that the overindulgence of one mode is what leads to problems, and that like I said, and goal of the three energies, how we use those three energies is what is important. For instance, if we're talking about goodness, being kind and good in leading self and others to Krishna. In the passion, like Prabhuji had said, enthusiasm in the seva that we're doing, then the passion is appropriate in this material world. And the ignorance energy, the dravya shakti, as you said, that sleep that we do, if we overindulge, then it's ignorance. But we use that sleep to recuperate so you can do your next seva properly, then it's still in the mode of goodness.
Yes. So Prabhupada says regarding sleep that 6 hours of sleep, up to 6 hours of sleep is mode of goodness. More than that, then it's mode of passion, mode of ignorance. So like you're saying, that was a detail I wanted to mention, that Prabhupada actually in the purport says that 6 hours of sleep is mode of goodness. Of course, some of us need a little more, depending upon our age and our type of work. But that's the basic idea. Last night I got 4 hours of sleep, and so that's why you might have noticed I was struggling a little bit during the class. It was a Friday night, we have a Bhakti Vriksha, and so it sometimes ends very late. So it ended at 11 and I slept by 12. So we have different needs based upon our age. When I was younger, I needed more. So exactly. So you raised a very good question, that even tables and chairs are composed of the mode of ignorance, and a devotee uses those modes, right? The devotee uses the modes that are present in this world. So what's the key thing? What's Krishna then telling us? That our consciousness should not be influenced by the modes of passion and ignorance. Our consciousness should be influenced by the mode of goodness. But like you're saying, the devotee must, while in this material world, engage all the modes in Krishna's service. So anything that is solid, made of earth, water, fire, air, ether, is of the mode of ignorance, right? We said, we looked at Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti, and Dravya Shakti, that table. Earth, water, fire, air, ether were under that Dravya Shakti. So ultimately, in one way, everything is spiritual because everything is coming from Krishna. But then that spiritual that's coming is of different variety. So the mode of ignorance, when it forms like a table or chair, it remains the mode of ignorance as long as we're not using it in Krishna's service. But when we engage it in Krishna's service, then it becomes transcendental. So a devotee is not exactly in touch with the mode of ignorance, because when they use it in Krishna's service, then that mode of ignorance is transcendental, which is the separate category. Like Prabhupada gave the example, the famous example of the microphone, right? He said this microphone is matter, it is mode of ignorance. But when I use it in Krishna's service, then it is transcendental, it becomes spiritual. Similarly, the deity, it's also earth. But the deity can never be mode of ignorance, right? Because Krishna, as soon as it's again connected with Krishna, it's transcendental. So it's both things. Like you're saying, on one hand, the devotee is in connection with the lower modes, but on the other hand, the modes never affect the consciousness of a devotee. And because everything the devotee sees in relationship with Krishna, they're even beyond goodness. You see, they are not, it's not just passion and ignorance. Even goodness is a problem. Like Prabhupada writes in the purport, goodness conditions one to a sense of peace and happiness. Goodness that's not transcendental. So what that does is that makes a person selfish. What people in the mode of goodness oftentimes think themselves to be better than others. You know, I'm a peaceful guy, I'm a counselor, and see all these agitated people, I know better than them. So even goodness can be entangling. A devotee, the point is that he or she transcends, meaning they are on the transcendental level, meaning they take goodness, passion, and ignorance, engage it in Krishna's service, and it becomes all spiritual. So I agree with you, and I would even add goodness to that list. Even goodness is something that is entangling by itself and must be engaged in Krishna's service. Nice question, thank you. Salja, I'm just going through the list to those who didn't get a chance, and then we'll come back. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, as always, for the wonderful lectures. And it's actually getting more interesting in the 13, 14 chapters when all we're actually breaking down in the depth.
Yes.
It's fascinating. Thank you more and more for all that. And the mode of material nature, I'd heard about it, and I think we referred to it even in chapter 13 on the different levels.
Yes.
Are we thinking in the mind? Are we thinking about the Lord? So I have a question in terms of, and it's unbelievable that the end goal is, again, the mindset connected to the Lord and the surrender and everything to elevate, bhakti to elevate to the higher level. And it makes me just curious about when we come from a different lifespan, are we born with a certain, the way I see it, are the XYZ coordinates of different Shakti levels where we operate in, right? Mode of goodness versus the mode of passion and ignorance. Do we come with a certain degree of reaction based on our past karmas? And is that, that probably becomes a part of the subtle body and probably comes here. Is that how it operates? And I know there are times, I'm going to kind of lead to a second question, but there are times like you see at teenage, we need we need more sleep. And it's just scientific, it's just body needs, right? So, and similarly, as you grow older. And so I feel like that shouldn't be viewed negatively, I think, even though it's a mode of ignorance. Is that, how do you really make that happen?
Yes.
But, you still has to be acceptable. And, at a age, you're more passionate, you have more activity and energy, you can do certain things. At older age, it's a different. But yes, mindset can still be associated with the Lord. I wanted to get thoughts and comments on these 2 points.
Yes, no, very nice. And I think the 2 points were related. I felt like it was this. One was regarding past life, and the other was regarding this life, right? And the reason why, like in our youth, we need more sleep generally is because there's more passion at that time, more excursion, and so we need more sleep. Now, in the case of like someone like Narad Muni, a self-realized person from birth, right? In their case, even as a child or a youth, right, they didn't need more sleep because they were already on that level. So life is also a progression for us. Similarly, in old age, those who have practiced spiritual life throughout their life, in old age can be very pleasant for them because they've transcended so many of the desires and modes, and they're actually then enjoying life. Whereas in material life, old age is seen as something very negative. But in spiritual life, old age is so wonderful. Like you're done with all the passions, you're done with all this stuff. You can just now happily absorb yourself in Krishna consciousness, if not earlier, right? If not earlier. So it's the modes are natural, but at the same time, the modes are there because of our consciousness. If we are more Krishna conscious, if we are more spiritually evolved, or we try to be more spiritually Krishna conscious, even as a youth, we'll need less sleep. Whereas someone who's in the same youth, but is maybe watching TV all day and, maybe playing sports all day, which is not bad, but let's say if that's their main mode, they'll need more sleep. So yes, so modes are natural, but at the same time, it's up to us how much we want to establish ourselves in sattva guna and pure goodness. And the same thing is of past lives, that actually, like we were reading, this was one of the key points in the chapter, key themes that you're bringing out is very good, is that our life is oftentimes dominated by a certain mode of nature, right? People tend to be like passionate people or good. So if it's dominated by a certain mode of nature, our next life will be designed accordingly. And so we get a certain, you could say, baggage that we start with, depending upon how we develop ourselves. So if we're very, very passionate, right, in our next life, we may come back as a tiger, right? Very passionate body, mode of passion. Or we come back as a human being, but very passionate in nature. So we understand, okay, this is what I started with. These are the gunas I'm born with. Therefore, I'm born with a Kshatriya spirit, because we don't say that they're determined at birth, but we do say that people have gunas and karmas. They have certain qualities that people are born with. People are sometimes, since childhood, more attracted to certain modes of work. It's also a kind of a fact. It's not just the environment. It's not just nurture. It's also nature. Children have certain natures. It's a psychological fact. So where do they get that nature from their past life? So we started with the mode of passion. Now we can't oppress that. Krishna tells us we can't repress it. That's our nature. But what we can do is figure out, okay, that's my nature. How can I engage that in Krishna's service? So I'm a passionate person, I'm a Kshatriya. If I engage that in Krishna's service, I can turn that passion into the mode of goodness. I can turn that passion into the transcendental mode, into devotional service. We cannot turn the passion into goodness. If it's not the child's nature to sit and study, if they're more an active child and their dream is always to become a warrior or a policeman, we won't be able to make them into a bookworm. So we cannot change the passion to goodness, but we can change the passion into transcendence. They can become a policeman for Krishna. That they can do. And in this way, transcend the modes of nature. And once we completely transcend the modes of nature, and we're only thinking about Krishna, we're on the transcendental level, then actually we can give up the modes. So a pure devotee then doesn't have to be a policeman, because that mode of passion is completely gone. But if we have that mode of passion, then the way to come to transcendence is not to repress it, but to engage in Krishna's service. So we like doing business. We're very successful in our career. Prabhupada said, very good. We must engage that in Krishna's service. We can't artificially give it up. Just like Krishna tells Arjuna, you cannot artificially stop fighting. You must fight, but fight for me. And then once we fight for Krishna and we come to the transcendental level, then we can give up that lower mode.
That's wonderfully explained. Thank you very much. That clears it out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Actually, unfortunately, I have to stop at this point. Bhadra Krishna Prabhu, again, we will start with your question. We started this time, we'll start next time. It'll just be the norm. Because we have another call right now at 8:30. Some of us do, so I have to switch over to that one. And it's 8:30 here. And please complete the chapter, read this chapter. It's so nice. I assign this chapter to my college students and they love it. Like, people actually really love this chapter. Like non-devotees, people who don't know anything about Krishna, they're like, this makes a lot of sense. So Prabhupada gives a very amazing points in this chapter, and please read it whenever you can. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Hare